Hello people, welcome to my channel. I'm very excited for today's video. Hopefully the quality won't be too crappy because you might not know this, but I really hate electric lights. And today I'm not having a good sensory day, I guess, so I decided to turn them off. I guess this is okay because it's October and Halloween is coming, so hopefully this is going to go with the atmosphere of the video. Right now it's very hot for October in Quebec. Let's just say that I'm here pretending it is 10 degrees while it is 24 degrees outside. So I'm just trying to get into the autumn spirit by drinking wine and lighting candles and all that silly aesthetic stuff. Hopefully this thing won't stain my teeth because that's not gonna look pretty. So originally I wanted to make a video about book recommendations to read on Halloween. But honestly, I think that most of us don't have the time to sit the whole day and read during Halloween. I know that I never have time during Halloween. Life always gets in the way. In the past 3 years, I had to work during Halloween. I personally study and work, so sometimes it's very difficult to manage my time and it's hard to find time to celebrate. But a couple of things that I've been doing during the past 3 years during Halloween is I do a tarot reading session. I don't take it seriously. I just like playing with the supernatural. I do it for myself. I do it to have fun. And I also read 1 or 2 short stories by candlelight and I drink a glass of wine. And this really worked for me because I used to get home at 10 p.m. after working. So I read to 12 in the morning and then I went to bed. And you know, you can always spare 2 hours or 3 hours of your time to read a short story. Well, if you want to read a book, you need the whole day or at least 6 hours if you're a quick reader. So that's the reason why I decided to change my video from book recommendations to short stories recommendations, because that's what I read every Halloween. And I also think that if you're interested in the Gothic but you are not sure yet whether to read or not a novel, reading short stories is a good starting point to decide if you like the genre or not. Now, disclaimer. I explained this in my video about the Gothic, but I'm going to repeat this here. Whereas in horror, you're gonna see lots of gore, in the Gothic, blood is almost aesthetic. If you ever see gore in the Gothic, it's never really explicit. That being said, that doesn't mean that Gothic stories are less scarier than horror stories. Gothic stories deal with really heavy themes. Some of the worst that you always see are... Not all of these stories contain those themes, but please still check the trigger warnings if you feel that you're going to be very unsettled by them. So that being said, let's begin. By the way, I'm gonna try to find all the stories on the internet and I'm going to try to link them in the description of this video so you don't have to buy any of these anthologies to be able to read the stories. So the first story I want to recommend is Snow Glass Apples by Neil Gaiman. And it is part of the anthology Smoke and Mirrors. All the short stories in this anthology are from Neil Gaiman. I really love the vintage cover of this book. So this story is a retelling of Snow White, but it's very subversive and it's really creepy. It's one of the most creepy short stories I have ever read. If you like the Grimm fairy tales, I think you're gonna like this because it's darker. It really feels that Neil Gaiman inspired himself in Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber. So if you like Angela Carter and the Grimm brothers, you're gonna love this. Again, it's really dark, so please check the trigger warnings for this. The next story I want to recommend is The Adventure of the German Student by Washington Irving. I don't own an anthology with this story, but again, you can find it on the internet. So this story is very gothic and very atmospheric. It takes place during the French Revolution, and the protagonist is a German student that lives in France during the Revolution. Again, I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil the story for you. I know when we read this in school, some people said that the ending made them laugh. To me, it was really unsettling. So I think it depends on your point of view, but I feel like if you like Gothic stories, this is perfect. I mean, almost every word in that story is charged with Gothic imagery. To me, it's a Gothic treasure, and it's definitely one of my favorite short stories. So please go read it. The next story is a classic of American literature. It is Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I know you probably read this in school, but I wanted to talk about it because it's such a cool short story. So basically the story takes place in New England, in a Puritan community in the 17th century. And it is about religious faith and how the devil can tempt a man or a whole community. So if you haven't read it, please check it out. It has some creepy religious elements that I think are very interesting. I have this in my anthology of horror stories, but again, you can find this on the internet. And the next story I think you have to read is The Masque of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. I adore Edgar Allan Poe. I'm really very surprised to see that I haven't made any video dedicated to Edgar Allan Poe. I love his stories so much that I have several anthologies with his stories. Basically, I have one to keep at home, I have one to keep in my room, I have one pocket size to carry with me to school, to like when I take the train and stuff like that. I really love Edgar Allan Poe. Whenever I have nothing to read, whenever I'm uninspired, I can always read one of his stories and I feel immediately filled with inspiration and emotion and magic. I would say dark magic, but magic still. So yes, it was really hard to decide which story to recommend to you because I have many favorite stories. I love The Fall of the House of Usher, I love The Cask of Amontillado, and I love The Masque of the Red Death. The Masque of the Red Death is very particular because I kind of feel that it's very fairy tale-ish. In my opinion, it contains more elements of the Gothic than of horror. And if you know Edgar Allan Poe, you know that most of his stories are more horror than Gothic, although the Gothic elements are still very present. Again, this is the type of story you have to read if you like Angela Carter and the Brothers Grimm. And the story is basically about a plague and a prince who wants to run away from the plague, and he confines himself with other members of the court in a palace and no one can get in. They are always partying and doing stuff, and then things begin to happen, okay? I'm not gonna say more. I'm getting too excited because it's Edgar Allan Poe and I love this story. But this story is one of my biggest inspirations to write. Again, I really recommend it. It's really dark. Story number 5 is The Demon Lover by Elizabeth Bowen. Unfortunately, this story is not part of any of my anthologies, but you can find it on Google. This story is inspired on a ballad called The Demon Lover, but the story takes place during the Blitz, and our main character is Mrs. Strober, who's going back to her town house to fetch some things for her family. This story has some romance Gothic elements in the sense that you have the main character being haunted by a dark past. If you're a woman, you're gonna love this story. It's beautifully written and it has some elements of psychological horror. Okay, so story number 6 is The Body-Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson. I think I like this short story more than The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Only because I think that The Body-Snatcher is a very neat story. It's really well written. It's basically about, as the name says, it's about a body snatcher. During the Victorian era, body snatchers were basically the people who would steal bodies from the cemeteries to sell them to medicine students so they could practice on the bodies. So this story is about that, and I think I have said enough. But so if you like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, know that The Body Snatcher is way creepier. So the next story is A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. This is the first work I ever read from William Faulkner. It's what impelled me to read Absalom, Absalom and the Sound and the Fury. It's a Southern Gothic story, and it's about a woman who is very isolated from her community, and she has a secret. That's all I'm going to say. She has a secret. It's a creepy secret, but it's going to shock you, and it's really cool. Story number 8 is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. You guys know that I love this book. Again, this is one of my favorite books. I have made a whole video about it. But for Halloween, I think you should read The Werewolf and The Company of Wolves, because those are the darkest and most atmospheric stories in the whole book. I really love The Bloody Chamber, the short story, but I feel like the ending kills the mood. So go and read The Company of Wolves, you're not going to regret it. The next story is The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. I said it before and I'm gonna say it again. This is one of my favorite short stories. And you know what? I don't feel like it's really creepy. It's not. But I feel like it puts you in the Halloween mood. In fact, this is one of the short stories that I read every year for Halloween. I always read The Cask of Amontillado and another short story of my choice. And the reason why is that this story takes place in the Carnival of Rome, and everyone is wearing a costume. You have some vaults and catacombs and those creepy elements of the Gothic, and of course, if it's Edgar Allan Poe, you're gonna have a murder. But the most important part of this story, and the reason why I love it, it's the theme of vengeance. You guys know that I love revenge. So that's the reason why this is my favorite Edgar Allan Poe short story. The last story I have for you is La Morte Amoureuse de Théophile Gautier. The English name of this story is The Dead Woman in Love. I'm gonna find the translation and I'm gonna link it in the description. This is a story about a female vampire, and it's really cool and gothic. It's not creepy, but it's a good gothic story. Actually, it is one of the best gothic stories I have read about vampires, because the original vampire gothic story is The Vampire by John Polidori, but that story is not really well written. It's a mess. It has lots of melodrama. That's the reason why it's not part of this list. I like that story, but it makes me laugh. This is a more serious short story. It is about a priest and a vampire and a female vampire. I love the ending of this short story. I thought it was really well written. It's amazing. It was also written during the 19th century, so you kind of have that writing style and that atmosphere that so many people like about the Gothic. Okay, so those were my Gothic short story recommendations for Halloween. I'm currently preparing some fun content for this month. I'm actually working in a couple of video essays. One of them will hopefully come out before the end of October, and the other videos are gonna be quite different just because I really love Halloween and I really love October, and I wanted to do something different for this month. I'm gonna continue with my normal content after October. I just want to try some different things for October and things dedicated to Halloween in particular, but my channel is not going to change its content. This is always going to be a channel about books, and especially about genres that I love, like the Gothic. Please let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books or if you're planning to read one of these short stories. Please take care of yourself and remember to have fun during Halloween. If you work, if you study, if you have a busy family life, please remember that you deserve some time for yourself. I wish you a wonderful week, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!